The ballroom fell silent. The instant the first gunshot shattered the crystal chandelier overhead, thousands of glittering pieces of crystal exploded into the air before crashing across the polished marble floor, sending frightened guests diving for cover as terrified screams echoed beneath the towering ceiling. Moments earlier, the elegant charity gala had been filled with warm conversations, soft classical music, and the clinking of champagne glasses. In a single heartbeat, that atmosphere vanished, replaced by confusion, panic, and overwhelming fear. 6 masked hostage-takers stormed through every entrance with military precision, moving as though they had rehearsed every second of the attack. They shouted sharp commands while sweeping assault rifles across the room, forcing everyone to freeze. 2 immediately secured the exits, preventing any chance of escape. Another rushed toward the building's communications cabinet and disabled it within seconds, cutting off any immediate call for help. The remaining men herded every guest into the center of the ballroom with aggressive movements and constant threats. No one resisted. Business executives, investors, board members, celebrities, and honored guests slowly raised trembling hands, knowing that a single mistake could cost lives. Several security officers attempted to intervene, but they were quickly overwhelmed, disarmed, and forced face down onto the marble floor. Fear spread through the room even faster than the alarms that had already fallen silent. Near the back of the frightened crowd stood Ethan Brooks, his young daughter Lily Brooks gripping his hand so tightly that her small fingers had turned completely white. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling with fear. Despite the rifles pointed throughout the ballroom, Ethan calmly crouched beside her. "Listen to me." Lily looked directly into his eyes, desperately searching for reassurance. "No matter what happens, stay close to me." "What if they shoot?" "They won't if everyone stays calm." His voice never rose above a steady, reassuring tone. His breathing remained slow and controlled, untouched by the panic surrounding them. Lily swallowed hard before giving a small nod, drawing strength from the calm expression on her father's face. Across the ballroom, CEO Victoria Hayes stood among the other hostages with both hands raised. She watched helplessly as armed men emptied phones, wallets, expensive watches, jewelry, and personal belongings into large bags. Her own private security team had already been separated from her, disarmed, and forced face down on the floor without any opportunity to fight back. The hostage leader slowly walked through the frightened crowd, carefully studying every face. One gunman muttered. The leader nodded without hesitation. "Someone nobody will fight for." His eyes finally settled on Ethan. Simple clothes, work boots, no expensive watch. A little girl standing beside him. The leader smiled. "You," he pointed directly at Ethan. "Stand up." Lily immediately clung to her father's arm. "Dad, don't go." Ethan gently squeezed her shoulder. "I'll always come back to you." Without arguing or showing fear, he calmly stood, while several nearby guests watched with sympathy, believing they were witnessing an innocent father about to become the gunman's example. What none of them realized was that while everyone else focused on fear, Ethan Brooks was studying everything. His eyes moved almost imperceptibly, never attracting attention yet missing nothing. He noticed which attacker favored his left leg with every step, revealing an old injury that slowed his movement. He identified the rifle that still had its safety engaged, making its owner less dangerous in the opening seconds of any confrontation. He spotted an emergency exit whose locking mechanism had not fully engaged during the chaos. One security camera continued, flashing its tiny recording light despite the apparent power outage, suggesting part of the surveillance system remained active. Reflections dancing across the polished marble floor quietly revealed positions behind him without requiring him to turn his head. Every pillar, every overturned chair, every table, every distance between the attackers, and every mistake they made was silently committed to memory. Years of special operations training returned naturally, as if they had never left him. The hostage leader mistook Ethan's silence for surrender. "You scared?" Ethan slowly looked up, his expression calm. "No." The simple answer made several gunmen laugh. "You should be. I've learned fear helps no one." The leader shoved the rifle harder against Ethan's chest. "You think you're brave? I think my daughter is watching." Nearby, Lily Brooks wiped tears from her face. She wasn't looking at a frightened father. She was looking at the same man who tucked her into bed every night, repaired broken toys with patient hands, helped her through difficult homework assignments, and promised that monsters weren't real. She had never known another version of him, and she had no idea that beneath his quiet smile lived years of elite military experience. One of the younger hostage-takers stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Boss, something's off." "What?" "He's too calm." The leader scoffed. "He's pretending." Ethan remained completely motionless. Even his heartbeat appeared steady, his breathing measured and controlled despite the rifle pressing against him. Across the room, Victoria Hayes couldn't stop watching him. She had negotiated billion-dollar business deals under impossible pressure and faced crises that had terrified seasoned executives. Yet even she could feel panic tightening her chest. This ordinary-looking single father showed no visible signs of fear, and she couldn't understand why. Without warning, the leader grabbed Ethan by the collar and yanked him to his feet. "Tell your daughter goodbye." The ballroom became deathly silent. Lily cried out, her voice breaking as tears streamed down her cheeks. Several guests turned away, unable to watch what they believed would happen next. Ethan gently looked toward his daughter one last time. Instead of fear, she saw the smallest reassuring smile appear on his face. Then his eyes returned to the hostage-takers. For the first time since the attack began, something changed in his expression. The exhausted single dad disappeared. The quiet confidence of a former special operations soldier took its place. The hostage leader couldn't explain why, but a cold feeling settled deep in his stomach. He had chosen the man he believed would be the easiest hostage. He was about to discover he had made the worst mistake of his life. The leader tightened his grip on Ethan Brooks's shirt and smiled cruelly, convinced that fear would finally appear in the quiet father's eyes. Last chance. Instead of answering, Ethan carefully shifted Lily Brooks behind a thick marble pillar, placing the solid structure between her and the armed men. His movements were gentle, calm, and deliberate, as though he were simply helping her cross a busy street rather than standing in the middle of a deadly hostage situation. "Close your eyes," he whispered. "I'll tell you when it's over." Without hesitation, Lily nodded. Somehow, her father's steady voice made the terrifying ballroom feel just a little safer. She trusted him completely, even though she didn't understand what was about to happen. The leader laughed loudly. "You still think you're in control?" Ethan finally met the man's eyes. "No, you already lost control." Before those words had fully registered, the nearest hostage-taker instinctively glanced toward the entrance after hearing a faint noise somewhere beyond the ballroom doors. It lasted only a fraction of a second, but it was exactly the distraction Ethan had been waiting for. He exploded into action. In one lightning-fast movement, Ethan knocked the rifle's barrel away from his chest before it could fire. At the same instant, he trapped the gunman's wrist with practiced precision and twisted sharply. The weapon flew from the attacker's hands, clattering loudly across the polished marble floor. Before the hostage leader could react, Ethan drove him backward with overwhelming force, slamming him into another attacker. Both men crashed heavily onto the floor, knocking over chairs as shocked gasps echoed throughout the ballroom. Chaos erupted instantly. The remaining gunmen raised their rifles, but Ethan never stopped moving. Years of special operations training took complete control. He stayed constantly in motion, refusing to become an easy target. Marble pillars, overturned banquet tables, and even the attackers themselves became shields as he moved through the room with remarkable speed and precision. Every movement had a purpose. Every strike ended a threat immediately. One attacker attempted to fire directly toward the terrified crowd, but Ethan redirected the rifle upward at the last possible moment. The burst of bullets shattered decorative sections of the ceiling instead of striking innocent people below, sending dust and fragments raining down across the ballroom. Another attacker rushed forward holding a knife. Ethan calmly sidestepped the attack, disarmed him within seconds, and used the man's own tactical sling to restrain him before he could recover. The final two hostage-takers suddenly realized they were no longer hunting frightened civilians. They were facing someone whose training operated on an entirely different level. One immediately dropped his weapon, recognizing the fight was already lost. The other desperately sprinted toward the nearest exit, hoping to escape before police arrived. Instead, recovering security officers, who had managed to reclaim their equipment during the confusion, tackled him to the ground and restrained him. Within moments, every attacker had been subdued. The ballroom slowly fell silent once again, broken only by the growing sound of police sirens, approaching from outside as stunned guests cautiously lifted their heads, struggling to believe the nightmare had ended so quickly. The ballroom gradually fell silent once again. Only moments earlier it had been filled with screams, gunfire, and desperate panic. Now the only sounds were distant police sirens, drawing closer outside, and the heavy breathing of guests trying to comprehend everything they had just witnessed. One by one, people slowly rose from the marble floor, looking around in disbelief as officers moved through the room, securing every restrained hostage-taker. Victoria Hayes walked toward Ethan Brooks, her expression filled with shock and gratitude. Despite years of leading one of the world's largest companies and making impossible decisions under pressure, nothing in her career had prepared her for what she had just seen. "You? Who are you?" Ethan bent down and picked up Lily Brooks, who immediately wrapped both arms tightly around his neck. Her fear melted away the moment she was safely in her father's embrace. "I'm just a father." Victoria slowly shook her head. "No, you're much more than that." A gentle smile appeared on Ethan's face. "I used to serve in special operations. That chapter ended years ago. Being Lily's dad is the title I'm most proud of." Lily smiled proudly and looked toward the people gathered around them. "I told you my dad always keeps his promises." Her innocent words touched everyone within earshot. Several guests, who had hidden behind tables and pillars only moments earlier, began applauding. At first it was only a handful of people, but within seconds the applause spread throughout the entire ballroom. Executives, investors, celebrities, security officers, and staff members all joined together, expressing their gratitude not simply because Ethan had defeated armed hostage-takers, but because he had risked his own life without hesitation to protect complete strangers who could offer him nothing in return. Police officers escorted the captured attackers away in handcuffs while investigators began securing the scene. Paramedics entered the ballroom to check on frightened guests. But remarkably, countless innocent lives had been spared because one man refused to surrender to fear. Victoria stepped forward and extended her hand. "Today you saved every life in this room, including mine. I'll never forget it." Ethan accepted the handshake with quiet humility before looking down at Lily. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go home." Still holding her father's hand, Lily walked beside him as they headed toward the ballroom exit together. Guests naturally stepped aside, watching the father and daughter leave with expressions of admiration and respect. Neither of them looked back. Behind them remained a ballroom, full of people whose lives had been forever changed by what they had witnessed. They would remember not only the terror of that night, but also the extraordinary courage of the quiet, single father who had stood up when everyone else believed hope was gone. The greatest heroes rarely announce who they are. They simply step forward when everyone else needs them most. If you plan to turn this into a YouTube story, these 4 expanded scenes now form a balanced narrative of approximately 1,600 words, about 400 words per scene, while preserving the original story, events, and emotional flow.